This is our first rock pooling trip of 2020. It's the middle of June and it's early evening, about an hour before low tide. Not a huge tide today, but I'm sure we'll find something interesting. We're carefully lifting rocks and seeing what we can spot underneath. Nothing under this one, but we'll put it back really carefully to ensure that anything we've missed still has a safe place to hide. Look really closely underneath this rock. You'll see some small creatures called sand fleas or sandhoppers. You often see them jumping around in dried seaweed. They can jump and they can swim. They're a type of crustacean, so related to shrimps and prawn. Nothing at first under this one, then we realised we'd missed a small green shore crab. Have a closer look, but don't worry, we'll find a much bigger one later. At first this looks like a sea snail, a really common creature called a periwinkle. In Sunderland we often call them willocks or winkles. But look closely, that's not a snail in there. Watch closely as this creature starts to move. As you see his legs come out at the front of the shell, you'll realise that this isn't a snail. This is in fact a hermit crab. Hermit crabs have hard shells on their claws and on their legs, but their body is really soft. Instead of growing their own shell across the body to keep them protected, they borrow shells from other creatures. There are quite a few of them about in this rock pool. This time of year, hermit crabs are mating up to breed. If you look closely, you can see this one collecting food, passing it with his claws into his mouth. Lots of differently shaped and coloured hermit crabs in this rock pool, but remember, they're all the same species. Their outward appearance is just the shell that they have borrowed. Hermit crabs are a type of crustacean, but they're not the only kind in this rock pool. If you look closely, you might be able to see some really small, almost transparent brown shrimp. These creatures are really well camouflaged, partly because they're almost transparent and you can see the background through them. They're really easy to miss. If you go rock pooling, they'll often be swimming around at your feet and you won't even notice that they're there. So again, carefully turning over rocks to see what we can see. Look carefully because you never know what you might miss. Stuck to the back of this rock are some creatures called Chitos. They look a bit like woodlice, but they are really hard and fixed really strongly to the rock. As you can see, I can't prise them off. These creatures are a bit like limpets. They feed on things like algae that are stuck to the rocks. They'll also eat barnacles. And to be careful with our next find because this one could give me a nasty nip. This is a green shore crab. It's one of the most common crabs that you'll find along our coast. She has powerful claws for tearing apart food and for defending herself. She has pointed legs, which are really good for gripping the ocean floor against the tide. She has flaps like paddles on her back legs, which enable her to swim really well. Shore crabs are good swimmers. She has a tough outer armoured shell for protection. Even her eyes are protected by it. And as you notice, she'll pop them back inside when I go near them. I'm holding her really carefully across the widest part of her shell. If I do this, she can't reach me with her nippers. We're going to release her carefully and make sure that she gets to safety. At this point she kind of hid, but in full view, and we were worried that the seagulls might get her. So I went back over and just gave her a little prod to ensure that she was hiding under the seaweed. This is a close-up of a brown shrimp. Even in close-up, very, very difficult to see this creature. Very small, almost transparent, and really, really fast swimmers. Very, very difficult to get a good shot of these. Easy to see this time, this is a much, much larger shrimp. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, just as fast as his smaller cousin, just much, much easier to see because he's a lot bigger. If you look really carefully in this clip, you might see the fish that we spotted. Again, very, very well camouflaged. It's a type of fish called a Gorby. There are lots of different species that get that name, but they're all quite small, often striped, well camouflaged, and live around rock pools. Keep looking, you may spot it. Have you spotted it yet? Follow the net and the little plastic spade and see if you can spot the fish. It's sitting really, really still, hoping that we haven't spotted it moving. Too clever for us to catch. Here's a close-up of a sand flea or a sandhopper. Again, closely related to shrimps and prawn. They can swim really quickly and they can jump when they're out of the water. Ready, Sam?
Yeah.
Can you find a worm cast? So that's one end of the worm's tunnel, and that's the sand that he's kicked out of the back. Can you find his other end of his tunnel? Yeah, so that's the little dimple, and between there's a big U-shaped tunnel, and that goes quite deep underneath the sand, and the worm, right now, because it's low tide, the worm's going to be hiding at the bottom. He'll come back up when the tide comes in. So now we've moved along the beach to Roker. Lots of similar rocks, but the seaweed here tends to be a little bit more slippery. We're right next to the pier, so we're going to see if we find some different creatures. Another tiny shore crab. This one's a lot more lively than the last one. And let's finish with a close-up of the pier, which is covered with living things. These are dog whelks, which are a kind of predatory sea snail. The whole surface is covered with barnacles. That's what that rough surface is. The larger creatures in the middle there are limpets. And the whole surface of the pier is covered with shells. Each of these shells contains a living creature, and as you can see, the entire surface is covered with life. In some cases, life on top of life. Keep searching, everyone.